So vote for Trump, don't vote for Trump. My conscience, he's such a bad guy, bad tweets, mean tweets. But if we don't vote for him, the country's going to fall apart. What do we do? Playing devil's advocate on Trump today. All this and more on Self-Evident Podcast. Guys, welcome to Self-Evident Podcast. You have Massey, you have the beautiful Carrie Campos, and a very special guest. Her name is Karen Vaughn. Karen Vaughn. Guys, there's a little clap going on. You can't hear it because I have the headphones on, but he's doing the clap.
Good.
She is not only our dear friend. We got to meet you in 2013. So it's been 11 years.
Been memorable, wasn't it?
Whatever year you were pregnant with
Aaron.
Aaron, that's right. So our son is named after her son, and she's a Gold Star mom, and she's just incredible. She's been fighting for liberty since before that, since a long time here. And so we're honored to have her because this topic is very, very dear to all of us, especially if you're a Christian. And we're going to play some devil's advocate. Should we vote for Trump, not vote for Trump, our conscience, all that stuff. We're going to go through that. So, guys, if you've not been to theselfevidenttruth.com, go do that now. Especially share this podcast with a friend. Thank you for all of you who do share. It's getting out there. It's growing. We love it, especially you guys on YouTube land. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Please leave your comments below. We'll get to those as fast as we can because there's just so much to cover, okay? So, also, don't forget, we have a $30,000 goal. If you guys want to help donate to that, we're pushing that. We're priming the pump, folks. We're just getting her across the finish line.
Crank it.
So you guys want to go to theselfevidenttruth.com and actually go on there and donate. You guys can help support our mission here because it's about a week and a half away that we're getting kickstarted here with a lot of what we're doing. So, guys, thank you for tuning in. So we got some questions, man. My wife actually came to me, and I'll let Carrie take it away here in a second, but my wife came to me with this, I think, deep-rooted question that every Christian's asking themselves, and maybe not every. There are some who are like, it doesn't matter. They will never vote blue. They could vote in a dog as long as they're red. I mean, that's what happens, right? In current politics, it's very tribalistic, so you see the divide quickly. But then you have Christians who are like, but dude, is he a Christian? Is he not a Christian? He's mean. He doesn't really comport himself well. He says he's a Christian, but he don't see the fruit of it, and I can't vote for that. So we're going to answer a lot of those questions and more. So, babe, I want you to take that away and kind of open this up.
Yeah, I mean, we I went to lunch with you last week, and we sat and talked about this whole genre of what is happening in our nation politically. And it always comes to that head during election season. But when I was talking to you and I felt like you had this burden to stand again for our nation, and when I say again, I say that lightly because you've been doing it since, years upon years, but really since Aaron passed, and really fighting at the forefront of our nation. And when you started talking about this election season and your heart to see Trump in office again, I'm like, I need a camera rolling right now because what you were spitting out and saying and your heart in standing and defending our nation, and your heart was for the people and not a political party. And that's the difference, I think, in a lot of people when they're voting. Our heart is not to align with a political party. Our heart is to defend the people and preserve liberty. And so when we got done, I was like, we need to get Karen on the show and play this devil's advocate, because it's not even just, is Trump a Christian, is he not? There's so many issues that go into this.
It doesn't matter.
Right.
That's what I'm going to want to talk about today. It doesn't matter.
And so we, and if you guys have been watching for a long time, Massey and Mike and all of us have struggled with this concept of, okay, Trump is not the savior, but where are we at in a nation who doesn't understand even just the basic understanding of our nation, the way it was set up? But all that, we'll get into all that. But I wanted you to speak just generally to where your heart is with this election season, just to start off. Like, I'll just let you go.
Right. So first thing I want to do is put a disclaimer out here. These thoughts are just my own. I'm just a mom. I'm going to do a Carrie Campos move right here.
Wow.
I am just a mom who happened to raise a child, who happened to become a U.S. Navy SEAL and make it all the way to SEAL Team 6, who happened to, 9 years later, lose his life in Afghanistan. It gave me a platform I didn't want.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that. But it also gave me an obligation that I will never betray, because the safety of the free world, the security of the free world is in the hands of the United States of America.
Amen.
Period. We all know this. We all know this intuitively. We don't have to even read history books. We know who people call when things get tough.
Yeah.
They call America, right? They don't just call America's government, they call Americans, because they know who we are, right? They know what our basic beliefs are, and that our basic beliefs are a Christian foundation that always runs to the aid of people who need us, right?
Yeah.
Out of our basic Christian founding. That's who we are, right?
Yeah.
And leadership always comes from the top. We know that. And so that's why it's important to have this discussion, because we do know. And before I go any further, I just want to say something that God really put on my heart. But first off, I'm not just the mother of a dead Navy SEAL. I'm also a believer. I gave my life to Jesus when I was 16 years old. I have lived a devoted life as a disciple of Christ. I'm 62 years old now, and I have spent my life, teaching the youth. I just want to give a little background that's not a political background.
Sure.
I've spent my life as a youth minister. I've spent my life leading worship. I have spent my life in the church, embracing the culture of the church and the people of God. And I've done mission trips. I've been to Israel multiple times. I just want you to have a little more background about me before you start throwing knives, potentially in this conversation, because it is a potentially such a hostile conversation. And so I want you to just kind of know a little bit about my background. And I can't remember where I was going before I got sidetracked there, except I want to say that I know what it was. The other night, I was laying in bed and I was thinking, first off, these are the realities. It, in general, does not matter as much who's president of the United States as it matters who we put in state offices and who we put in Congress and Senate, right? That's the truth. Second off, we become so divided over presidential elections.
100%.
And it has become so just terroristic when you look at things. I was on Billy Baldwin's X account last night looking at this video he made about Ann Coulter, and I just encourage you, it's not fun to watch, but I just encourage you to go watch it to see how vile people are about politics. And what I want to remind everybody is this. We're in a world where this is not how it was supposed to be. First off, we were never supposed to have two parties. It was always supposed to be a multi-party system, right? It was never supposed to be right versus left. It was always supposed to have some middle ground areas so that people all felt represented, and then as a country we could come together. But remember this, inauguration is in January. The presidential election uprisal in our nation starts less than 3 years later. So every 2.5 years, we are ripped asunder in this nation by politics, by a presidential election. And I just want to say first, we should all stop and just acknowledge first off how crazy this is.
That's exactly right.
That we allow ourselves to become this emotionally involved in a presidential election that's going to revolve again in 2.5 to 3 years.
It's almost a lack of emotion. Like it's like a lack of conscience we get to. Like your emotions get so crazy where it's like you become reprobate in a sense. There's not even no like love anymore. It's more straight up vileness. I mean, when Trump, the attempted assassination, did you see how they tried to spin that? It was like, well, he wasn't shot. I mean,
it was a shard of glass.
It was a shard
broke out. Like that
They
matters.
wouldn't even talk about
Right.
it like that. They hate this man so much where they wouldn't even say, okay, look, there was an attempted assassination on a former president, regardless of what you think he is or whatever. The guy almost lost his life. And the fact that they couldn't even say that and people were justifying it, even people on X saying, man, I wish he wouldn't have missed, is like, that's
how do you
far.
get there? How do you get to that point in conscience? Like,
right.
To say those things. But even what the right says about the left, it's the same thing.
It's the same. It is exactly the same. It's just as vile. And, last week I put a post on my Facebook page and I said, if you're voting for Kamala Harris, please explain why. It was a genuinely asked question. So what happened immediately is that my Facebook page got loaded up with conservatives who were saying why they're not. I'm like, okay, that wasn't the question.
Right.
I wanted to genuinely hear from Democrats who intended to vote for Kamala because I wanted to understand what would make them vote for Kamala. We're going to talk today about why
Sure.
I'm voting for Donald Trump. But here's the thing: is as soon as two of my Democrat friends spoke up and said why,
They got eviscerated.
they got eviscerated.
Yep.
Now, okay, stop talking about the left and the vitriol of the left if you're just as guilty of it.
100%.
It is repulsive behavior. There is absolutely no need to mock people, to make fun of people, to call them stupid. We're going to talk about that as the presidential candidate that we're all here to talk about today. I'm going to be very honest about my thoughts. So go ahead. You wanted to ask me some questions about this, and we wanted to have kind of just a back and forth discussion of why it is that I'm
Sure.
supporting Donald Trump.
Sure, we're playing devil's advocate on Trump. You know what I mean? Like what? So the kind of the antithesis of Trump, and so I have my questions personally with God, but I came to the point where a dear friend of mine, Alex McFarland. Alex Newman's a friend too, but Alex McFarland asked me, and he talked to me, and so did Bill Federer, and they said, "Listen, what's hard about where you stand and where we all stand, who know history." And know the country, like you were talking about two-party system. Washington actually warned that it would divide and destroy our nation, a two-party system. So he said, the problem is you're such a purist that you're up here in thought, and this is where you want to go. The rest of America is ignorant to a lot of those things. So you almost
By
need to
design.
come right.
Right.
So you need to come back down to elevate us. Where are we at right now that can get us best on the course of track? And I thought, that's compromise. I mean, my mind right away goes to compromise. Is it compromise to say I have a conscious decision I have to make before God? And I have my thoughts on this, so I'll retort after she responds. But could it be that a person truly does say before God, I prayed about this, I cannot vote, I'm going to vote a third party because I can't vote for Kamala either, right? Ultimately, they all say it. If you don't vote for Trump, you're voting for Kamala if you vote third party, okay? But is there a place for that where someone could say, I'm going to stand before God with this, and I don't feel comfortable for voting for either one?
I definitely think if you have a conviction before God to not vote for Donald Trump, you should absolutely obey your conviction. I'm saying this is my point. I wrote this article that went viral a few years back. It was kind of shocking how viral it went, but it actually created a title for itself. People posted it in newspapers across the nation. It was called The Salty Sailor
yeah.
and the Fireman. You can Google it. You'll see it. It was kind of it was an emotional Facebook post that I wrote that basically said this. If I'm in a house burning down and a fireman comes to my rescue, and on the way in, I hear him, slurring vile language. I find out that he's an adulterer. I find out, it doesn't say all of this, but these are the implications.
Yeah.
I find out that he just cheated on his wife right before he got, the night before he got the call to come pull me out. Do I care about that stuff, or am I looking for him to pull me out of the burning house? That's why I did surrogate work for Donald Trump in the 2016 election and was happy to do it again in 2020. They didn't call on me. I'd be happy to do it again now, and here's why. As I told you in the opening, I'm the mother of a fallen Navy SEAL. I know what it looks like for America not to exude strength across the nations.
Yes, ma'am.
This is what got so many people killed. And let me just stop here a second and say, when our son died, he was killed in the largest loss of life in the history of naval special warfare, the largest one-day loss of life in the entire war on terror. It stirred up a media frenzy. 30 U.S. service members died in one helo shootdown, rushing into a battle zone that was compromised. And without going into that whole story, what I want to say out of that is it made my husband and I get up off the couch and start fighting for our defenders. Mm-hmm. We realized that our defenders were actually being pawns in this massive military game that was being run by people who did not have America or our warfighters' best interests at heart.
You guys wrote a book about it.
We wrote a book about it called "Betrayed: The Shocking True Story of Extortion 17," and we started traveling around the country talking to people about it. But here's what we found out: in the first 7.5 years of war in Afghanistan, we lost 630 troops. In the next 3.5 years after Barack Obama implemented his coin strategy in Afghanistan, talk to me about this offline if you want to, that in the next 3.5 years, that death toll had risen to over 2,000. Because of the strategy we were fighting with in Afghanistan. The wounded in action numbers, I think they went from 2,300 something in the first 7 years there to 7.5 years there to like 18,000 in the next 3.5 years. And it was unacceptable for us. And so what we realized...
What was the coin strategy?
The coin strategy was the counterinsurgency strategy. And what that basically meant was we need to treat the Afghans with respect. We need to put our warfighters'
So don't fire until we're
don't
fired
fire
on.
until we're fired upon. That's exactly why Aaron's helicopter went down that night. We were fired upon by a unit of terrorists who had been tracking the helicopter. We'd been watching them, and our air weaponry above was refused, denied the right to take them out 7 times. And then they finally shot down an American helicopter. I mean, it is absurd.
It is.
And so you need to understand, that's my background coming into this. I know that America is weak with I know that the nations are weak with weak leadership. We are not electing Jesus Christ. We are not electing our next savior. We are electing a commander-in-chief, and we are electing the CEO of an economy. So let's talk about it like it is, and that hopefully removes some of the pressure as a believer. Look, if you're looking for character in a president, tell me what president in our history had perfect character. Please name any of them.
No, you're right.
Please name any of them, because the ones that we exalted and lifted on high, we found out later were vile people, because guess what? We're all sinners saved by grace.
That's true.
We are not looking for a person who does not have any character flaws. If we're looking for that, we might as well forget it. So it comes down to policy.
It does.
It doesn't come down to who you think has a better character, because I guarantee you, if you read anything about Kamala or RFK, you're going to find out that their characters are really no different than Donald Trump's. They might have different kinds of flaws that don't offend you personally quite as much, but you're going to find flawed people, because that's who we are. We are flawed people. If I ran for president, I've lived a pretty decent life. I've lived a pretty clean life. I've been married since I was 18 years old.
The great one.
To the great one. And I've been married 44 years now. I've had 3 children. I have 6 grandchildren.
How is that possible? You're only 35.
What?
How's it possible when you're only 35?
I don't know how it's possible. I mean, I mean.
I need some health strategy. After this, guys, we're going to talk about skin strategies.
Yeah, I'll share my. Yeah, no, but honestly, if you looked in my background, if you wanted to find something ugly about me, you could find it.
Sure.
I mean, you're not going to find adulterous affairs and things like that, but you're going to find, desperate times and hardships and times where I, didn't perform well in my job. You're going to find things.
So do you think people are confusing character with diplomacy?
Absolutely. That is a very good way to put it. Look, that's it. Let's just state this one more time, and then I'm going to walk away from this. We are not voting for a person's character. We are voting for the CEO of the largest operative machine on the globe, and that is the government of the United States of America, who is going to be CEO of that. And that's actually, we were a house divided in 2015 coming into 2016 elections. My husband did not want Donald Trump as president, and I did. And I was one of the first people in my whole network who said, no, this is smart, because we need somebody who exudes strength. We need somebody that, even if they're flawed and they're messed up and they say hateful things, the other countries, the other nations around us know they better not mess with us, because he might just be crazy enough to push the button. That's who I want in the White House. And by the way, I've met Donald Trump, and I've met his family. And I'm going to tell you, I know it doesn't seem like it when you just see him from a distance, but these people are kind, well-behaved, wonderful human beings whose lives have literally been demolished because he wanted to serve the United States of America.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so on this devil's advocate thing, I want to ask you something that I read in a book by, I believe it was John Bennett, and he said on the political character, voting for character, is it plausible to say for people who struggle with voting for Trump? And how we got in this conversation is you said somebody private messaged you and basically like, how can Christians vote for Trump with this, this, and this, and this? Right. And it's character. So is it plausible to say, because John Bennett was pointing out that if somebody can't be faithful in their private life with godly character, how can I, to the people that they love or that they're married to, how can I trust them to take care of and look out for people that they don't even know?
It's a great question, and here's what I would say to that. I'm going to do another Carrie Campos
Okay,
moment.
I did not do that, but go ahead.
Listen, seriously. It's a great question, but here's the thing again. Bring the candidate for us to vote for, that is that person. Go ahead, bring them. Because you know what? I would be 1,000% behind that candidate if I could find that person who had the gleaming character. But here's the thing I've learned about politics, just dabbling in it the way I have for the past several years, unwillingly, but have been forced to, is I find that most people who want to be politicians also have this basic flaw. And I'm not saying all of them, definitely not all of them, but a lot of them have this basic flaw of wanting power. Okay, with that type of personality comes a lot of issues. You will find a lot of good people who say, I will never run for office because I don't want to go through what it takes to become, to win that seat or whatever. All the way from, this happens all the way in local elections, all the way up to national elections. And so I feel like, yes, could we have a better candidate? Yeah, we could. We don't.
Right.
We don't.
So with what you just said, I am very much a historian. A lot of our founders did talk about character is important because what he is in private is what he is in public.
Right.
The trouble is you hear a lot of people who meet this guy in private who's like, he's not the kind of guy he portrays himself as in public, right? Including his granddaughter who spoke at the RNC, including many politicians who have like blacks, whatever, like they all come on and say, no, the dude's actually really cool, but this is what I think I had to turn my heart around too. I mean, I voted for him last election. I don't know. I don't think I voted for him the first one. I didn't vote for him in 2012.
2016.
No, 2016, 2020, 2016.
2016.
I voted for him in 2016, but didn't he run in 2012?
No, that was Obama
2016 and
So
2020.
Okay, cool. So yes, I remember I voted for him in 20. Yeah, I won one of them.
One of them.
One of the problems or the issues I had was he wrote this book, The Art of the Deal. If anybody reads it, that is literally how he thinks. His whole thing is he can use his words and he uses his prowess to get what he wants.
Right.
He knows how to manipulate a situation.
Right.
Just call it for what it is. He can determine and get an outcome by what he wants. But then you hear some of these guys when they're with him behind closed doors meeting with world politicians, and they're like, no, the dude was like no nonsense. You see,
Right.
there was an interview with what's her name? She just got fired from ESPN, Black lady. She has her own podcast. 2 senators sat with her and said, we sat with Trump in a room across from Afghan leaders. And he was like, if he doesn't stop, I know where he's at. And he gave him the picture of where the guy lived. I mean, that's how, and they were all like, what? And so the interpreter was like, I can't interpret that. He said, tell him he's dead if he moves. And it's like, that's the kind of stuff as a world leader in that sense that you need so that we're not messed with, because we produce literally a huge part of the global GDP. If we're weak, the rest of the world is weak. Daniel Webster said that in 1801. He said, hold on, my friends, to the Constitution. He said, if we don't hold to the Constitution, there will be anarchy throughout the world. We're seeing that more and more and more. So that's what really turned my heart. The question, I think, for most Christians is, how do I do that knowing that he has said stuff in the past? I know my answers. I can blow that crap out of the water, right? But it's not just that. It's more on he just seems like he can't get along with anybody. He seems like, the indictments, how do you get past those things? The indictments and all these other things.
I would love to speak to that.
Sure.
So the indictments are actually lawfare. We all surely know this by this time. If anybody believes that it's not lawfare, that it's not a political system going after a political opponent, you really are kind of living in a blinded territory, because this is very clear. If we wanted to go after politicians who have performed illegal acts, that we could, the minutia, like where does that lead to? And you said something a minute ago. I can't remember what you said that I wanted to address. What? Say what you said just a minute. I'm
you
so
can't
sorry.
do that to me. I'm a cuff kind of guy.
I'm sorry. When you talk about his personal personality versus his public personality,
life.
right?
Yeah.
This is really important because, as I said before, I have met him. I've never met a warmer, kinder human than him. And not just him. It's like I said, a lot is reflected in the family. I ran into Eric Trump in the airport one day, just a layover in Charlotte or Atlanta. I can't remember where it was. And I just walked up.
How do you rate? I never see cool people at the airport.
I just literally walked over to him and I said, hey, I hate what's going on with your dad, because I can't remember what was going on at that point. It was several months back. And he goes, And you know what? He just struck up this conversation with me like you and I are talking. He is not they're not elitist, even though they've been raised as multi-millionaires. They're not elitist at all. I have this guy who takes me back and I travel a lot and speak. I have a guy who picks me up from the airport and brings me home. He happens to drive part of the Trump family frequently. And he talks about their graciousness, how wonderful they are, what great people they are. And look, that doesn't come, you know, to use Kamala. Do you think, Kamala, you think I just fell out of a coconut tree? Look, what comes from the tree, what comes from the tree is what is the fruit that is born from that tree. And his fruit is good fruit.
I was on, I believe it was TikTok, some reels this morning, and it was this liberal saying, tell me something good that Donald Trump has done outside of political, because all you Republicans, you know, going after his character. And so I go to the comments and it's thing after thing, like somebody changed his tire in New York, Manhattan, and he paid off his mortgage. And he paid for the gentleman's funeral who passed away. And he was a president without pay for 4 years. And and all these comments are something. And there was no response, of course, from the person who posted it, of course, because they expect that there's nothing because that's what the media portrays.
And
He's the only president who's come out of office poorer than he went in and wants to do it again.
Right.
Yeah.
Because
he has nothing to gain from this.
He has nothing to gain. He's had all the power he needs. He's had all the money he needs. And this is what I've learned from him and from his family and from a very close friend of mine a couple of close friends of mine who have worked in his campaign, one who's still there. He loves this country. He hates what is happening to our country. We are voting. Here's what it comes down to. We are voting in this election between it's really funny because the Democrats are saying you have to protect democracy while they demolish every evidence that we are a democracy. And at the same time, you've got a guy over here who says, I want to preserve what America is supposed to look like, and we hate him. And as Christians, we're saying we can't vote for him because he cheated on his wife or he's got babies by different women. It's ludicrous to me. You are voting between the establishment. Everybody wants Kamala to win. Everybody who has run this country into the ground wants Kamala to win. There is one person standing up for the people, and his name is Donald Trump. And I don't care what he's done in the past. He is one of us, and he has taken the brunt for all of us. Because I guarantee you, if the IRS or anybody wanted to come after any of you, they could do it. So stop about the stupid lawsuits and things like that. They have tried to bury him politically in lawsuits. It is not about him versus other people. It is about establishment that has taken us down a swampy, nasty, filthy drain into communism, Marxism, versus the one person who says they want to, and I believe personally, they want to reinforce a representative republic. They want people's votes to count. How horrible. They want a great economy again. How horrible. They want to drill for oil again to protect and build our economy. How horrible. They want to build. We even had the president of the union speak at the RNC this year. That is the first time. Is it the first time in history that they have supported a Republican because they believe he's going to support jobs more than the Democrat platform is. And so you're voting between two clear policies. It's not about his personal life.
Right.
And also, when you I'm sorry, I'm talking a lot, but also when you said that about the way he speaks publicly versus personally, God, do every single one of us who've ever had an encounter with him wish that he would be the person in public that he is in private? I don't know why he chooses to put that persona on. I don't know if it's a defense mechanism. You know, the man has literally been, ever since they came down the escalator, he's literally been under attack. His children have lost businesses, you know, like his whole family. I can't believe his family still supports him doing this. What he has sacrificed to do this for us is astronomical to me. I don't know of another person who would do it, but especially with nothing to gain. And by the way, can we just talk about all the houses that the Obamas own now?
Yeah, right.
What do they own? Like about $50 million in properties now? And
talking about fixing income equality.
Talking about fixing income inequality and sharing a piece of the pie.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. And what you said a while ago about Donald Trump and those stories, I've heard so many of those stories from people where I've seen personal stories where since I surrogated for him in 2016, I've seen personal things. He donated money to Operation 300. And, this isn't why I hate to even bring that up because it has nothing to do with it. I was already supporting him and fighting for him long before he did that. But he's got a great, big, giant heart. And he loves this country, and he loved the prosperity and the strength of this country, and he has seen it being whittled away by bad policy, and he's willing to sacrifice everything to bring good policy back.
So I have your Facebook page pulled up because I wanted to move on from like the Christian perspective of why you can vote for him, why you should vote for him, and then talk about policies. Because, I watch these and I get you can make a reel, TikTok, Instagram reel to basically say anything you want it to say. But in general, when you have these people going to the DNC, you have them standing outside asking, tell me one good policy that you want, that you're voting for Kamala for. Like, what's one of the policies? One policy that you like. And they're like, nothing, crickets. They know nothing. And I'm not saying all of them because I'm sure there are some. But when you were talking about economy and the guy wants to open up the pipeline and how horrible, and reinstate jobs, how horrible, which would essentially bring our gas prices down, which would ripple effect into everything, how horrible. You wrote on August 14th talking about a client that you have that's very old who is losing her home at this point. And you wrote you wrote the story of her, and then you wrote multiple people, and that's one of the reasons you're voting for Donald Trump. So I want you to talk about that, because I think that's when you say, I've watched it as when Republicans or conservatives say, we want a blessed economy again, people say, well, that's all you care about is your money. It's like, or I care about the elderly
people who are losing their homes. I am a loan officer by trade. Fairway Mortgage, look me up.
That wasn't a paid for
Shameless
ad, by the way.
772-214-7224.
Shameless plug. Shameless plug.
No, I deal with this all the time. I am watching people lose their homes. This woman who I made the post about, I just found out we cannot get her in a reverse mortgage because her credit is already so shot that she doesn't have a high enough FICO score to qualify. So guess what? She and her husband in their 80s are about to be homeless. I have family members who cannot buy groceries. If you want to talk about moral values, let's talk about that. Can we talk about the moral values of the fact that there are millions of children in this nation who are starving right now, who don't have a home, who are living under bridges, who but we're making, I don't want to go into the whole illegal thing right now, but we're creating housing for illegal immigrants who broke the law to join us in this nation, while our own go without, while our veterans go without. Look,
while the couple in their 80s who have paid into their taxes and Social Security their whole lives are losing their home.
That's exactly right. And so if you want to talk about voting with your morals, let's talk about some morals. Okay, let's talk about a few morals here. What you just said about the moral obligation we have to build a better economy, which is not going to happen under socialism or Marxism. Look at Venezuela. Everything that Kamala is promoting right now is the path of Venezuela. Fixing food prices, things like that. Housing prices. Let's talk about
$25,000 for home loans. That's
capitalism
works.
Crazy. And other countries have proven that capitalism works, and those other systems do not. So let's talk about your moral values. Every president in my lifetime has promised to move the United States Embassy to Jerusalem to honor the Jews. Nobody did it but Donald Trump. And he did it in the face of such adversarial opponents that it was World War III is going to break out if he does this. I was there. I was there in Israel. Israel had banners, had 40, 50
You were there for the opening of the embassy.
For the opening of the embassy. Yeah. They had banners all over Jerusalem. They had American flags all over Jerusalem. Thank you, Donald Trump, because a dream was fulfilled that we owed Israel, in my opinion, for decades, and had not fulfilled the promise. Every politician promised to do it. None of them did it. So if you believe that the Jewish people had ownership of Jerusalem, let that be part of your conscience. Also, let this be part of your conscience as you vote. Donald Trump appointed the Supreme Court justices that finally overturned Roe v. Wade. That was Donald Trump. If you want to talk and return to these to states' rights where these things where they always were supposed to be, right? That was Donald Trump. His game, his mouth, is his worst enemy. His policies are good, and they've been good for us, and he has promoted Judeo-Christian values throughout his entire 4 years, as opposed to the DNC hosting an abortion truck outside their conference. I mean, if you've got one or the other, is that what you're voting for? Or are you going to allow those people to get the White House because you're going to sit back on your laurels and say, sorry if this makes me a little angry, but if you're going to sit back on your laurels and say, I'm voting my conscience, I'm not going to vote. Or I'm voting for a third party, which, by the way, that third party you may not know anything about because they haven't been vetted by the American public. They haven't been ripped apart and their lives torn open
and the
because
bullets haven't
nobody
started
cares.
flying.
That's
Literally,
right.
yeah.
That's right. And so vote your conscience and go ahead and let Kamala Harris become part of the White. Because you know what's going to happen? It's going to be abortion on demand across this nation, all the way up to 9 months, post-abortion deaths of babies. Go ahead and vote your conscience. I get angry about this stuff as Christians sit back and talk about, he had a divorce, he got failed businesses, he tweets bad things. Stop being babies. Pull your big girl and big boy pants up and vote for the person who's going to restore the values that you believe in, because he will. He has already proven it. It's not like we have to trust his word. He already proved it.
Yeah.
He shared our values the whole 4 years he was in the White House against extreme adversaries, like trying to stop him from, I remember a meme one time, because I was following it closely because I was part of the whole election thing, and I was following it closely. And I remember this meme one time, and there's all these bills laying on his desk. It was a picture of him and all these people standing over him. And he's like, can I say the word SHIT on here?
Sure.
The meme said, bring me more shit to fix. And I was like, yeah. Because that's what you did. It was so poetic and
Hide the
so
kids.
perfect. Sorry.
So there are definite things that I have questions on policy-wise that he did. When you close down businesses and things, there's a lot of things that happen too that I will say, man, now here's where I attribute that to.
Are you talking about COVID?
Yeah, COVID
Yeah,
and all that
okay.
stuff. So there are several things. Like the whole US Embassy thing, I get it. I mean, that's cool. That doesn't strike me as policy more so than acknowledging someone as a state nation. You know what I mean?
And it's acknowledging, it's
Right.
also acknowledging that you are our greatest ally.
Right. So my point on, I went through this throughout so I'm going to acknowledge and hit. There are certain things that I think Christians get wrong too, that he's the king of the nation, that he can fix everything. That's
Right.
Congress's
Right.
job.
Right.
And
And
local
you're blaming
government, yeah.
President Trump for the lack of Congress's duty.
Right.
So, or the Supreme Court's duty. Amy Coney Barrett, I never liked her really because she was very, very wishy-washy. She does vote on some things that are conservative for sure, but there are some things now she's very wishy-washy on.
Yep.
But we're not electing perfect. Right now, where we're at right now, and this is very hard for me to say, but it's true, because of the ineducation or the ignorance of the American people, we think Trump will be a king. The left says it all the time.
Right.
He's going to get in there and he's just going to weaponize and do and
Dictator.
dictator. It's like,
Well, that's because that's what they do.
But no,
They're
no.
projecting.
Beyond
Yes.
beyond
Yeah.
that, we've created as a populace that the president is the
Right.
king.
Yeah.
That no matter what they do, they can sign executive orders, which are illegal. They can sign, they can call law from Congress. They can sway the votes. They can fix everything. That is not their job. They're literally the presiders over a nation, the presiders over an economy. And so what's really difficult about the conversation we're having is he may have had some bad policies. Congress did not do their job when they said, let's shut down the nation. Congress should know better
That's
than
right.
that.
Yeah.
Congress should know better. I'm not trying to say Trump was innocent in that, but I will say this. His advisors were pretty terrible about that.
Yes.
Whereas his political advisors, we all knew Trump was not a constitutionalist because he didn't really study it. He's coming in saying, I just want to fix
businessman,
things,
yeah.
right? He's a
Right. I
businessman.
just want to fix
Yeah.
things. Right.
Right. So his constitutional advisor, I'm not making excuses for him. I called him out on the podcast many times, and I will continue to do so, whether it's Kamala, whether it's Trump, or whoever. I will continue to do those things because we should as Americans. That is called freedom of speech, folks. Here's the thing, though. We look at policy and we go, man, he did some things that were not great either. He raised the debt almost $8 trillion. So it was about
Yes.
$7 trillion total. And you can blame COVID, whatever, but that's a lot of money. We got on
It is.
Obama about that. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things that he did. However, no one talks about the derelict of duty of Congress. Nobody talks about the states and how they should be taking their own authority, which is Amendment 9 and 10 of the Bill of Rights. They should be standing up in place of the federal government and saying, no, federal government, you can't do that. And they're not doing it. The states are willing to fall on their own sword and blame Trump. You see what I'm saying?
That's what,
So really, it's not even about just him running the nation. It's about the states running themselves too.
Right.
And that we got to call on our governors to run their states the way they should constitutionally.
If you can put up Mike Michael Festian's comment, shout out from South Carolina. He said the federal government should fear the states, not the other way around.
Right.
We need to get involved from the bottom up in government.
1,000%.
Yeah, and I think that's watching, an outside view of your frustrations with Trump is it's not even necessarily Trump.
It's not.
It's the people's misunderstanding and ignorance and lack of education in how our government is set to run or should be set to run.
Right.
Trump's basically picking up the pieces that the states and Congress won't do.
And the people.
Or Kamala and Biden, right? They
and
know
also trying to force back to the states what their responsibilities are.
That's
that
exactly
they have
it.
refused to take responsibility
100%.
for.
You know when it started to change? When it was the Kristi Noems, it was the DeSantis's, it was the Texas's, right? It was the states when they started to say, yeah, we're not obeying that.
Right.
That's when the federal government was like, whoa.
Right. That was my favorite part about 2020.
Really? No, it was
Yeah.
that shook. And that was when the Jen Psaki's came out and said federal law has more authority than state law.
And nope.
Dude, she's so unconstitutional with that. It's unbelievable. The only time federal law can trump state law is when states violate their own Bill of Rights that go against our federal Bill of Rights. That's when the federal government could come in and say, no, you're becoming dictators yourselves. That's not what we agreed to in the union. So what's happening is we're almost depending on Trump to fix everything. And that's where I think most Christians, and I've warned about this for years, he is not a king. And they're literally looking for him to fix everything. And he doesn't have the authority to do that. What happened when President Biden got into office the moment Trump got out? He started undoing executive orders because we put all that onus on Trump.
Yeah.
And that's not his job. His job was to, hey, these are the policies, Congress, it's time to move forward. And I find it so funny, right? We've been complaining about Kamala saying, we're going to fix this when they created it.
Yeah.
But all those years of Republican-controlled Congress, Senate, presidency, and they did nothing. But yet the Democrats never get their foot off the gas. Never.
Never. They are fighting when they're sleeping, and we're
Incredibly.
sleeping. And it is so frustrating, and that's why I'm all about returning the rights to the states, because on a state level we can have a greater impact. I always said if I ran for any sort of Congress, it would be for state. It would be in the state, not government, because that is a tangled up web of nothingness, in my opinion. They have done nothing. They do not do what they're supposed to be doing. They do not represent the elected. And, and I even remember, and I'm going to say this just as just as one of those little things I'll throw in. I was good friends with, I'm not going to say his name. I was good friends with a guy who ran for Congress in Oklahoma, I believe it was, and he won. And then I remember listening to a podcast of him one day and him saying, and you're, bear me out here and let me finish this statement, okay? He said, I don't care what the people want. I answer to God. And I, as a believer, I took a step back and said, wait a minute. You do. You can't vote against your conscience, but the people elected you. You are their representative. Well, guess what? He lost his seat the next time around because he wasn't representing the people. But that's the power of the state. You can't, when you talk about national elections, they're all people just check the box of the name they've heard the most.
Truth.
That's what they do. They don't care. You know what I mean? Like
Literally.
most voters don't care. They're like, I've heard this name a lot. I'm
Our
sure.
local elections happen that way.
It happens that way too, right?
Yeah.
And so if we start focusing more on local,
The name sounds cool.
yeah. Did you do that?
She did. She was. There was one person we had no clue. It was like, who is this?
I like her name.
Her name was Karen, so I voted for Karen.
Well,
You're welcome.
had to be good. And let me just tell you something, by the way, Karens have taken a really terrible rap. And nobody's naming their kids Karen anymore, so my name is going to become extinct, and that is not fair.
It's not right.
That's racism. No, so can we go with that for a minute? The answer even from that is I don't answer to the people, I answer to God. That is very true. But even then, you don't answer to the people, you answer to the Constitution. Because the people could say, we want all the people who are church goers to change their church going days to Saturdays. But then the Constitution or the Bill of Rights says, no, we can't infringe on their religious beliefs.
I'm going to clarify on
Right?
that
Do you know what I mean?
because it wasn't a biblical issue.
That's what
that
I'm
he
saying.
was talking about. Right?
That's what I'm
he
saying.
was just saying,
Yeah.
I'm going to get in here and I'm going to vote my
100%.
conscience. And I'm like, that's not what you were elected to do.
No,
you were
right.
elected to listen
No.
to the people, collect an idea together, and then vote their, the people who elected you also believed in your conscience. They believed in your position as a Christian. Now they're asking you to listen to them and you're not. So guess what? You're out.
That's can I add to that? This is where I think Christian conservatives get it wrong too. We're electing Trump to make sure that our Christian values are upheld. Now you're forcing Christian values. Now you're taking away the duty of the church. Hear me out here.
Yeah.
The church is a prominent fixture in society. Why do you think Margaret Sanger works so hard to get the pastors on her side to promote Satanism, basically, child sacrifice?
Yeah.
The church has more authority than they give themselves credit for through the Spirit, right? The reason I know that is because why is there such an attack on the Spirit of God? Because they can change, because things can change when the church gets involved. I think the biggest problem is I remember when Trump first got elected, that December, we could say I heard this all over, but we could say Merry Christmas. And I'm like, when couldn't you say Merry Christmas?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? So it's weird how I want the Christian listening, check your heart. Have you put him on a pedestal as an idol to say this guy will fix everything when it's actually not true? This country could fold tomorrow, but Jesus Christ is still on the throne. We have to make sure that we know our laws well enough to know if the country folds, the states still have rights. We still have rights as humans from God. And so that's a really weird thing that we're seeing, I think, in the political discourse.
Yeah.
We think this guy's going to come back and just usher in these crazy things from God.
That sounds familiar.
Yeah. Constantine, third century. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just saying, dictators will do what they do, and they will dictate what religion is, and they're already doing it. They're already doing it now in America. If you see now, Christians can't be involved in politics, separation of church and state. You know what the government just told you? You can't worship God the way you want to. You can't serve him the way you want to. So separation of church and state is, to them, exists. That means Christians can't be involved. They've just told you how to believe. That's what they've been doing for years. It's all this psychological crap. And I think what's really cool about what you're doing in this podcast, and I appreciate it, is you're bringing such a different perspective, but a needed perspective for all of us to look at and say, is it really your conscience, or is it because you're bothered?
And
is
listen,
it really your conscience?
That's right. That's right. And you know what else? I feel like in the Christian world, this is going to be a big shock to you listening, but I feel like in the Christian world, we get very caught up in the holier than thou.
Woo!
Say it louder.
For those in the back.
Reach.
And so if you can justify that you're more moral than I am because you can point these things out about another person, Donald Trump in this, for instance, then that makes you feel like you're in some sort of elevated platform to me. I've seen that a lot in my discussions with other believers. They all of a sudden start exuding some sort of, I don't know what the word is, but some sort of attitude of I'm better than you as a believer because I'm more concerned about these things than you are.
That's what the Pharisees
And
said.
it is Pharisaical. Is that the word?
It is Pharisaical, yeah. I remember
Pharisaical?
when the Pharisees, they were like, well, I'm not like that guy. I'm not like the
Right.
sinner.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so they feel like if they can get on social media and point out his failures, that they're somehow, I don't know. To me, it's an offensive position as a Christian. And again, coming all the way back to the point I started with, we're not electing. I mean, yes, could we have a better candidate? Yes. Do we? No. So it comes down to, do you want to save the United States of America as a free Republican, as a free
Republic.
representative
Yeah.
republic
Yeah.
is what I'm trying to say. That was not a slip. But, or do you want to hand it over to become a communist, socialist, Marxist country and live like that? Do you want to stand in, and I'm not trying to like fearmonger, but do you want to stand in bread lines for your food? Because that's what's being suggested right now.
I agree. Well, I do think too, like if you can go to that, there's a huge difference between biblical correction and nitpicking.
Right.
Biblical
Thank you.
correction, when you're that kind of person where you see the error of someone's ways, us as Christians, the Bible actually says to restore such a one. So in other words, my job is to go to that person, say, hey man, there's some errors here.
Right.
Let me help you walk through this so that you can do what you need to do. Because if we're going to go by just pointing out error, Nathan didn't do that when he confronted David. He walked him through, he prayed with him, right? So it's like when the prophet goes to the king, he says, hey, this is a sin. So now let's pray, let's repent, let's do this. If you're just constantly pointing your finger at a presidential candidate who you don't even know, you truly are living holier than thou, and all you're doing is working the law, not grace and not prayer. I think that's what's so important about being a Christian is if you're in sin, Karen, I'm not doing that. I'm not saying you are.
Yeah.
But if I ever said, man, I think this is something off in you, I would hope that you would expect from me, he's going to pray for me. He's going to show me scripture, walk
Right.
with me through it. Man, I didn't
He's
see
not going
that.
to slay me in the public media.
Bingo.
but
And it's so
right.
crazy. Y'all will put him out publicly, but y'all won't pray for him privately. You know what I mean? Like discernment. What's that Corey Ten Boom quote?
Well,
Discernment.
discernment is not the gift to criticize or judge. It's the gift to intercede and pray for.
Yeah.
Amen.
Essentially, it's
There you
not.
go.
So you can discern Trump might be bad, whatever. Dude, here's what I'm saying too. Like, and it's really, really bad that in this nation we've come to the point where we have to choose the lesser of two evils. It's a sad tragedy. We are at that point in a lot of ways to choose the lesser of two evils. But there is a point too where we have to acknowledge before God, I'm sorry, guys, and I'm saying this as the owner of Self-Evident. It'll probably get me in trouble. I don't care. That the left is straight up satanic. This is Satanism.
All you got
on
to do
display.
is look at the van parked outside their
Yeah.
Yo,
national
listen,
conference.
and
This
you
is
got
wicked.
and the people they have around, it is straight up satanic. I can say the same thing about the Republican part when they're trying to mess around with the abortion stuff. But that's our job to uphold the platform that we've been a part of for years. Maybe we should be the ones to say, no, we're not going to get rid of that abortion. We're not changing our stance on abortion. We're not changing our stances on this. We're going to honor God. That's on us. But when you're looking at a platform who literally promotes socialism, communism, in essence, promoting things that
and child slaughter.
child slaughter and vasectomies while serving hot dogs.
Yeah, and
Never
making
mind.
making fun of
The
that.
jokes,
you know,
the jokes
like,
make themselves.
That's really funny, isn't it?
Yeah, the
It's
jokes
really
make
funny.
themselves. And so you look at that and you go, where in the eyes of God can you stand before him and say, gosh, there's a choice. Now, here's where I will say our responsibility in this republic, the nation God put us in, is there's a voting process. That is a responsibility given to us from the founding of America, which is a right given to us by God. We have a responsibility to vote. I'm going to submit to you before anything, and I pray you guys could do your own thing. Are you voting in child sacrifice? Just on that issue alone. I can go with 1,000 issues that I see wrong with the Democrat Party and plenty with the Republican Party too. Or am I voting in liberty and freedom? And I wish people would stop putting Trump on this moral train. If conservatives would get this, we would win in a landslide if we would just take them on these two things: foreign policy and the economy. If you're just honest with yourselves, you're really about your wallet, right? And that's cool. Like that's at least say that. I promise you'll win conservatives, you'll win middle roaders, and some Democrats that they'll say, yeah, the economy was way better. If you ran on that, perfect. But don't run on his character or his diplomacy, because you're never going to win on that, and he won't change. He's proven that. So you're going to stand before God with your vote. Choose you able men. It's 1 Kings 18. Choose you able men who fear God, right? So far what I've seen is he's willing at least to acknowledge God. He's willing at least to acknowledge the Constitution, to say we need to get our nation back to its principles. I think it's pretty fair.
I want to say one thing that you made me think of there is, a lot of people will say, well, to keep a clear conscience, I will not vote. I'll just not vote. Listen to what I'm about to say. Inaction is action. Your inaction can cause ripple effects through generations. You have to act. You have a responsibility to act. You do not have the liberty to sit home and say, I'm going to sit this one out. That is not okay. That is not what my son gave his life for. I'm going to throw that card out there. That's not what he gave his life for. For
That's
you to
not
sit
a
back
card.
and say
That's
that.
testimony.
You don't have that right. You owe it to every single person buried in Arlington National Cemetery to cast a vote. You owe it to them.
I didn't mean that
period.
as a correction. I'm
No,
saying
that's fine.
I don't even
Yeah.
think you need to say the card. That is your son's life. He fought for a constitution, upheld an oath, and said, I'm defending this thing.
Right.
And how wicked of us to say, I'm not willing to vote and defend the Constitution the way we know it to be,
Right,
in
because
the absence of diplomacy.
Yeah, because the lack of vote is always met with a willingness to complain of why they're not voting.
Right.
And it's like, I look at you, the investment in our nation, just from one family alone, requires everybody to vote. And you're talking about all of Arlington. But like, it's always that I'm going to follow my conscience and not vote, but is always met with all these reasons and complaints against our nation why you're not voting. It's
Right.
like, you don't get to complain if you're not only do you not get to complain, but you don't get to partake in all the amazing things that our nation offers if you're not willing to do the least of your duty, is voting.
Well, that's right. And also, what about, the primaries? What about trying to work behind getting a candidate up there that you do support? We're here. I mean, unfortunately, this is where we are, right? So you have to choose. You have to make a choice.
Sure.
And you have to choose to protect the United States of America. You have to choose who knows what's going to happen, honestly. I don't know what's going to happen in the next 8-10 years. Nobody knows that. But honestly, I can see two paths. Clearly, with what's in front of us right now in this election, I can see a path to restore where we've been as a nation.
Or at least
A semblance
clicks
of it.
back, yeah.
As a couple clicks back, or I can see a path to race toward a completely different kind of country.
Yeah, it's
because
Venezuela.
Obama said it way back in 2008. Remember what he said is, I want to fundamentally transform this nation. Well, guess who's been running in the background of this nation ever since that election? It's Barack Obama, period. He's a puppeteer over every single thing that's going on right now. If you don't know that, just do some research. That's exactly what's going on.
I think too, to worry and put so much emphasis on a federal election is very, very bad in not knowing our law system. Martin County here, where we're at, we're from St. Lucie County, you and I. The elites are in Martin County.
Martin County here.
But St. Lucie County too. St. Lucie County too, man, we had some awesome victories. Some people we truly believe in that are godly, constitutional, talking about, hey, we don't want to go back to the 2020 type of thing that we saw. And it was cool to watch. I'm more excited about that than the...
And you should be.
Now...
That's where change happens.
Right.
Obviously, our presidency is very important, right? And so, but dude, so are our state senators, so are our county commissioners, so are our town councils. So
is the sheriff's
so
election.
is the sheriff's elections. Yes, you need someone who's working for the people, which thank God you have. I mean, and I know he's retiring, I think soon, isn't he? But Sheriff Snyder
is going to be fantastic.
right?
As well.
So Sheriff Snyder was, to me, one of those. I actually cried when I talked about it. He and I got into it a little bit, but I think it's because he was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He's like, do I obey the county because of a pandemic, but I also know it's unconstitutional. So we got into it a little bit, but he's totally, like, we're cool. But I remember talking to him, and then he ended up showing up at the church, and he told our pastor, I told the county commission I can't shut down churches. That's a First Amendment issue. When you have a sheriff like that, like, I remember that, I was crying. Like, it just... Finally, we're seeing where it's supposed to be. That's where the authority is. It's in the local. That's what we can control. That's where our people are listening to us.
That's what, when back in 2004, when Michael Peruka ran and we did the Institute on the Constitution course, he said that the sheriff, in many cases, has more power than the president. And us, right out of public school, were like, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah.
And it was like this... And then 2020, fast forward 16 years later, we're like...
the law?
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. And so... Please be aware that you can put your emphasis and focus on a federal election. That's important. But if you're not even involved in your local elections, really, what are you doing?
Yeah.
You're just complaining about things that you don't even understand. One, two, like Planned Parenthood says, well, if you're the husband, you don't have a uterus, you can't say. Well, if you don't vote, you can't say. You know what I mean? And I'm not even justifying what they say because I think that's retarded in and of itself. And I can say retarded because he said the S word. So she opened the door. I can just say.
Do you want a nation that keeps promoting the DEI?
Not only that,
and the let's, every child at 4 years old should have the right to be mutilated, to have their bodies mutilated, because I wanted to be a cowboy when I was a little girl, but my mom didn't buy me a horse and a saddle. For crying out loud, if you wanted to be a policeman, your dad didn't go buy you a gun, did he? Because this is the insanity of the left right now. And if you can't vote for Donald Trump, vote against that.
Yeah.
For God's sake.
I will say too, to use our national symbol like a White House as a promotion tool for a sex life has to be probably one of the more vile things you can do. Not just the Planned Parenthood stuff, which is terrible, but to use a international symbol like the White House and promote a sexual lifestyle.
And can we also just talk about military leaders and males in dresses?
Yeah.
Like, do you want to be that? Is that do you think that makes us safe, or do you think that makes us the freaking laughing stock of the nation?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Take that, right? If they can't even lead themselves to the truth, what makes you think they're going to lead the military? This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we have two choices, like you said at the beginning, unfortunately. Never intended this way, but here we are. Once we get what we can, this is why we as a ministry work so hard to reform the nation back to what it was, because that's what the founders did. These guys went up against a system politically that was so totally against them by one person, which was the king and his cohorts, right? So you look at the insurmountable odds of, can we get this nation back? I don't care if you think we can or not. I firmly believe we can, unless Christ comes back. Right now, he says, occupy till I come. That's why we do what we do. I will continue preaching history in the way it should be for as long as I can, because I believe God still has us breathing for a reason. We got a people to disciple. So right now, where we're at, we have to elect where we're at. We don't have a choice. Unfortunately, that's where we're at, right? But I'm not even saying it's like, oh my gosh, it's terrible. We can't. No, there's clear choices right now. There are clear, unadulterated choices.
Yep.
And the bottom line is, here's where we're at. You make the choice. That's before you and God. But continue to do what you do for like helping. I know some of you take our Constitution course, and now you're in churches doing it. And we just had Kelly McKittrick.
Yeah.
Her husband's teaching our course to homeschool kids, and it's like, that's so awesome that they're actually going back to history. Most of these people don't even know. We've been able to do these camps in the summer, going to inner city kids who have no idea about government. They have no idea about American slavery.
Because the schools aren't teaching.
That's
it.
exactly
That's
it.
right, yeah.
And they're getting blown away, dude, by like when we talk about American slavery. Yes, it happened, but let's talk about the other stuff that happened. And they're like, wait, I was never.
When were women allowed to vote?
1912?
1919.
Well, I mean, but they weren't always.
They always were allowed.
What?
Not really.
I'm so like,
I mean,
where are we
there's
going?
just a lot of history.
The husbands will
nobody,
tell you otherwise. Yeah,
There's
they
just-
voted through me.
There's just a lot of history nobody talks about. Is all I'm really trying to point out. I'm not trying to, compare
Amendment, yeah.
Yeah,
women to
women's
the black
suffrage.
I get what
history.
you're
Like,
saying.
but there have been a lot of rights fought for through
Yes.
our and because and I'm just going to get on my little high horse right here. It's because of freedom we're allowed to keep fighting for these rights. We have to preserve freedom at all costs.
But
Freedom.
liberty,
Liberty,
which
right,
means it's
that's right.
dangerous.
Because anytime somebody has liberty, they're allowed to fight for what they believe in.
100%.
If liberty is removed from you, you are a pawn in a kingdom.
Bingo.
That's it.
Liberty in and of itself, and some of you who I love what you just said. Liberty is dangerous. Why? Because there is opposing views that you will not like Bernie Sanders, straight up socialist communist. I don't like him. I think as far as him promoting that proves to me he's selfish. It's demonic. Proves that he doesn't know Christ. So there's a lot of things that I could see with Bernie Sanders and his ilk. Like the Black Lives Matter people who are all socialists. There's going to be ideas we don't agree with, but if you silence them, eventually if they get in office, they'll silence you. So you can't silence opposition, right?
Right.
Either their ideas hold weight and it's going to work or they won't. And so America's system, its ideal has lasted this long. What makes us think that by shutting down opposing voices is going to continue? It's not. Liberty is what keeps our nation going. So we're going to have to fight for it. We're going to have to fight for, unfortunately, the Kamala Harris's right to speak.
That's right. That's right.
Planned Parenthood's right to speak. I don't think we should fund them, but they have the right to talk about it.
And if they ever lose that right, we've lost who we are as a
That's
nation.
exactly
That's exactly
it.
what
That's
you're
exactly
saying.
right.
Yes.
We can't force morality. However, we can preach it and we can live it. And so we have to be the ones not to be the FJB people. Just promote Christ and walk out your ideals and watch the Lord move.
You mean I need to take that sticker off?
Hey, man,
my,
I don't do
I
it.
don't have that sticker.
I'm just saying. Gloria Tucker just said vote no on 3 and 4. Yes.
Amendment in Florida.
Yeah. Vote the Amendment 4 thing, that in and of itself is ridiculous on the abortion issue. So you want to vote no on that from our personal opinion. If you don't like it, comment below. We don't care. I'll take you out for coffee. Let's do it. Guys, we love you so much. Thank you for tuning in to Self-Evident. Thank you, Karen, for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It's
It was
kind of
fun.
nice. I'm living every Mexican's dream, sitting beside 2 blonde bombshells right now. Okay, I'm just saying, because I married Carrie, my credit score instantly went up 200 points. It's another at least 100 right now because I'm sitting next to this one. I'm just saying.
On that note, we'll see you
We will
next
see
week.
Go to theselfevidenttruth.com. Go ahead and give your support if you can. Sign up for our monthly sponsorships. You guys, it's going to a poor Mexican family here in Florida.
Wow. Okay.
And we love you guys. We'll see you.